All right. So I'm John. And my wife is Lisa. Raise your hand, honey. There you go. So she's the administrator, and she does all the work, and I just teach. There you go. We have a website that I share with my brother-in-law if you want to get the recording, or we're on Church Center, the church app too. So we're going to continue going through the book of Revelation. It's a continuous course where we're going through the entire book, probably take a year roughly. And so every time, if you come in, a little bit in the middle, then that's fine because we're going to continue to go through it. And there's so much material there that there's a lot of different opinions of interpretation, but wherever you land on that, there's just a lot of material and a lot of exhortation and a lot of information the Lord's giving us. I like to, from time to time, bring out, prophecy in the news, what I think is prophecy, prophetic. It's interesting. I think most people are aware of Bitcoin and crypto, but ultimately what they want to do is make one world currency. So that's a ways off. I'm not saying that's, going to be here next year, but the whole idea is that there's already pioneers in this field. And one of them is Alex Blania, who is creating WorldCoin. And ultimately, the idea is that everybody will not have physical money anymore, and that you will be able to. I mean, there's a lot of people will receive it because it sounds so good, right? You don't have to worry about people stealing your money because you don't have any on you. You're going to have your own little ID of some kind, probably before there's even a mark as such, and that you are going to be able to, buy and sell with that. And you're going to have your bank account in the cloud, your crypto. So the problem with that is somebody might be able to even get into there and steal your money, right? I mean, they do it now. Uh, there's all kinds of exploits, as they call them. Of course, I'm in the business. Our company, Oracle, didn't get affected, but there's a lot of airlines that were seriously affected this last week because of a glitch in the software. So all that's to say that we're so integrated with all this technology that we're dependent upon it. If there's a glitch, and apparently this wasn't malicious, it was just a fault in the coding, but it doesn't take much. I mean, I was working for Oracle, and I was around about Y2K time. You might remember that. And, the whole company was in a panic. It was all this propaganda. The world's going to shut down, So I'm on duty that day, and I'm waiting for it all to shut down. It didn't shut down. So, I mean, we went through all kinds of preparation. There was a lot of money spent to get the code up to snuff, as they say. So, yeah, but nothing happened. But this is not going to be quite like that. This is going to gradually be incorporated. But the whole idea of this little article here is that you have to have some kind of foolproof system. And the company I work for, and even in this laptop now, for the first time, I have a fingerprint reader. But so it's going that way. It's called Windows Hello, or Mac system has it, that where you want to have an identification that's not dependent upon a password. Very soon, nobody in this room will be using any passwords. That's going to be going away very soon. Well, soon, I mean, in the next 5 years, So, but this thing that this article is talking about is maybe a little further out, but it's hard to say. Technology is really speeding up in an exponential way. So you're going to have eyeball readers. You see these sci-fi movies or military thrillers now where, the guy has to put his eyeball up. Well, of course, that technology is usually the advanced technology is incorporated by our military or corporations, and then it filters down to the public. So this company here is trying to implement that. So what's going to happen is you're going to have an eyeball reader to identify who you are. Of course, they're going to, like in Windows Hello right now, they have keys, they have fingerprint readers, and even facial recognition. That exists now in Windows if you want to use it. I'm using one aspect of it. But that's all to say, as a general background here of how fast this is coming, is that there are many streams. So, people in the past would say, oh, these things have always existed, all that prophecy stuff. These nuts have always told us about this stuff. Well, they're forgetting one big factor. To really have world dominion like the Antichrist is going to have, you're going to have total control. And the only way to have total control is to have a convergence of all these technologies. So AI is the big buzzword now, and what it's able to do is amazing now. But the next iteration of it, like Chat GPT 5.0 and beyond, is going to end up ultimately, they project by 2030. That's projection by Ray Kurzweil, the Google futurist and AI guru, that by 2030 we're going to have what they call the singularity. And that's a term that was created by Alan Turing, who in World War II broke the Nazi code. He was a mathematician, but he projected that there'll come a point that when you're dealing with a computer, you won't know if it's a person or a computer. We're almost there now. I mean, we're getting really close. So this isn't pie in the sky stuff, Bartee's making all this stuff up. No, I'm not making any of this stuff up. I'm just monitoring it. I'm in that business. I see it coming quickly. So ultimately, AI is, you're going to have the super intelligent robot, which is going to come a convergence of the AI in the robotics. I was just talking to a friend of mine, Pastor Mel, who's the associate pastor at New Life, one of the largest churches in Colorado. We went to seminary together. But I was talking to him about some of this very thing here, and he wasn't aware of it. I think a lot of pastors and the average parishioners are not aware of what's out there, what's going on. But the thing is, I said, yeah, how's your son doing? He said, oh, he's working for Amazon. And I said, Amazon, what's he doing? He's in the warehouse. I said, well, that job will be gone in 5 years. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, that's because they're going to replace all of it with robots. And he said, no, my son just told me there's robots in the warehouse already. Yeah, how many people know that? Unless you're zeroing in on it. You get your Amazon things every day. At least we do. Maybe not everybody. We just got some vitamins today, right, honey? My honey, she knows how to use that app. She can get anything. She says, honey, just keep on making the money and I'm gonna bring in the stuff. So, but the thing is, I said, Mel, I said, I said, that's just the tip. They're going to have the entire factory robotically revolutionized by 2030, probably a lot sooner. This isn't pie in the sky stuff. It's coming right now. So, then you had the world coin. So that's the crypto. So any one of these things, if it was happening in a vacuum, happening by itself, you'd say, oh, it's just coincidence. That has nothing to do with anything. But when you look at all of them, this has never existed in the history of the world. You can go back and people say, oh, that prophecy stuff. No. Until this stuff came into existence, the concept of one man controlling the world was impossible. Couldn't have happened. Imagine if Hitler had this stuff. So Hitler is just a little type of the Antichrist. But that's just to say, yeah, Robert.
What's unique about the electronic cyber currencies is that they have the capability of restricting how you spend your money, whereas with paper, I mean, they can't control it. You just, but.
Good. Yeah, that's exactly right. Robert was saying that they can control how you spend your money. And that sounds a lot like the scripture that they cannot buy or sell unless they have the mark. Well, the mark is going to be some kind of identification that's part of your person. Is it going to be something visible? I think it's probably a combo of something visible and invisible. but ultimately it's going to be tied into the computer system. A lot of this is still evolving. You know, what we might say about this several years from now may be a lot more poignant than even what I'm saying now. So you got your one world religion. Ultimately, keep in mind, Satan loves religion. Satan is the author of religion. You know, if somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, I got religion." I go, "Which one?" You know, I graduated from the University of Miami with a degree in comparative religion. That's where you study all of them. And so, you know, I know what they're talking about. The devil doesn't care which religion you go for. It reminds me of that the old knight in the cave in the Indiana Jones movie, where the Nazi guy was looking at all the chalices, and he, you know, and the Nazi had to pick one of them, right? And so they're all bejeweled and glittering and golden, diamond encrusted. And so he picks the gaudiest one he can find, right? That's got to be it. And of course, when he drinks the so-called, you know, healing holy water, his head explodes. Figuratively, that's what happens to anybody that selects a false religion. Satan doesn't care which one. You can go for any one you want to. They're all the same because he authored all of them. He says, what would you like? Would you like some Hinduism? I got some of that for you. No, you're more of a Taoism guy. Here you go. Oh, you want bastardized Christianity? Here you go. And I use that term in the true sense of it, meaning that it's syncretized. You're bringing all kinds of paganism and put it together with Christianity. The latest version is Chrislam, where you bring Islam and Christianity together. But at any rate, I've just said, you know, Christianity has become a religion. It was never intended to be a religion. Jesus did not come to establish a religion. And if you got religion, come up to me after the service here, the teachings, and we'll talk about it, because you need Jesus, not religion. No religion can save you. In fact, more people will be in hell due to religion than any other cause, even so-called Christian religions, because Christ did not come to establish a religion. The scripture and the relation, it's a relationship with him, not a religion. You can only do so much in the way of yielding yourself to him. It's really not a work, but I digress. So in this whole thing, it doesn't matter, coexist is the one world religion. And some of these existed for a while now, Unitarianism and Universalism, and you hear all these terms. Those are all one world religions where everybody's the same, whatever you believe, we don't care. There's only one thing you can't believe in. Do you know what that is? Jesus. Okay. At the Olympics, they open up a ceremony with a blasphemous Last Supper. Interestingly enough, they didn't parody Islam. They didn't parody Hinduism. They didn't parody Judaism, or what is the only religion that's the truth, and therefore Satan is trying to destroy and parody.
Good point.
It was an abomination, but that's not the main point. Main point I want to make is that you can tell what's true by who's being attacked. There's only one faith, and I use that term religion loosely. There's only one faith that's attacked. But the next thing is CRISPR. CRISPR is gene editing, and that has arisen after the Genome Project of 2000. So now we have mapped the entire genome, and we have the ability, it's already being done, to create monsters, okay? So they are now editing genes by putting different creatures together, and we don't even know for sure what they're doing. They're not going to tell you what they're doing. I'm sure they're making monsters. And we call that chimeras. Chimera was an ancient mythical creature that had many parts of it. Of course, any of the old gods that would have like the body of a bull, the head of a lion, wings, all that, that's in a sense a chimera. But this is a true chimera. They're making actual living beings out of many genes from different creatures. And they're finding sometimes washed up on the beach some of these things, and we can't say for sure, but they've never been seen before, and they look like an experiment. So it's like most things, you're not going to know what they're really doing until they're already totally there and using it for some purpose. The Internet of Things, this is really big. The 5G, I think probably most people are familiar with 5G on their phone. The main reason for that, the reason they needed more bandwidth and frequency was because they're going to put computers, they're already putting computers into everything, your refrigerator, your stove, everything that's in your house that has some kind of electrical aspect is going to be hooked up to the internet. And as usual, it's like, oh, this is a great thing. Look how convenient it is. And I love it. You know, I have Amazon little walkie-talkies in my house. You know, when I was young, we had walkie-talkies. Even when I went to seminary, we took two different vehicles and we had to have walkie-talkies between them. And one time she got lost, we turned off on I-10. I was going north and she kept going and oh God, don't let her get out of range because it will never, you know, I know it's hard. It's only 30 years ago, right? 30 years ago, I couldn't be assured even talking to my wife, except we rigged this walkie-talkie thing. Well, that's what Alexa is. Alexa is a really souped up walkie-talkie. So I have some of those. My daughter hates them, but I use it. You know, of course, the key is every once in a while you got to talk to it and you got to tell it, Alexa, I love the government. Just tell it that and you'll be okay. So if they are monitoring, they'll hear that. Oh, I guess Bartees are okay then. Okay, we'll check them off the list. Okay. But at any rate, so in our cell phones, you say what is ubiquitous? I mean, you can go to a bum, I don't know if that's what a housing challenged individual. I don't even know how to talk anymore. Housing challenged person on the side of the street, the odds are the person has a cell phone. Yeah. You know? I remember Obama gave cell phones to all kinds of people. Yeah, so you know, not to get political, I'm just saying, you know, the idea is everybody's got to have a cell phone, right? So, but all these things together are the key because all of these things are going to be part of the one world government system. So, there's two sides of the coin coming up here in Revelation 17 and 18. That's my belief. Not everybody believes it. So I believe that the chapter 17 and 18 are essentially a single pericope. And that's a theological term. Well, it's more of a literature term, but it's just pericope. It just means to cut around. So if you take a huge scroll and you would, you know, figuratively or literally cut around a portion of it, that's a pericope, a pericope. So, you know, I believe that 17 and 18 are two aspects of the same system. Keeping in mind, the original was a scroll. It didn't have chapters. Chapters were put in by Bishop Langdon in the early 1100s. So what's that, like 900 years ago? That's a long time. That's 3 times longer than the United States has existed. Think about how long ago that was. But anyway, up to that point, nobody ever heard of a chapter. So the bishop and his, I guess you could probably God led him to do it because we all use it and it's been successful.
Did they put chapters in when they started making it into a book?
The books were originally codexes, so they went back, but where they had sheets of paper bound together, and ultimately that concept became a book. In fact, the Bible means Bible means the book. That's what it means, and they say it originated from papyrus that they were beating into sheets in a town called Byblos. And so anyway, but that's enough history. So you can look into that. But at any rate, you know, they were using animal skins and they were using metals like the Dead Sea Scrolls. Many of them were metals, copper and silver, what have you. But over time, they used more and more beaten reeds or more and more paper-like substances. And then they got the idea. It's a great study if you want to go back and put, you know, layering them together and binding them. And ultimately, you know, by the Middle Ages, you started having books. And now you don't have books.
Is that?
So, I mean, that's a great study, the transmission of knowledge by man. And so, you know, it's as far back as the flood, you will find evidence of written communications and language. So, And that's another whole study. I digress. Just to let you know, in my understanding, I believe that there's two portraits of one system. In other words, Babylon is a system, and there's two aspects to that system. There's the religious aspect, and there is the governmental, political aspect, economic aspect. So, I say one's more secular and one's more religious. So as we look through it, that's the perspective I'm going to be used. So the one world economic system is talked about more in chapter 18, and chapter 17 we're going to see is more the religious system. In chapter 17, verse 1 through 3, we see the woman on the beast. Then one of the seven angels with the seven bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters." So now we have a dilemma. What is this great prostitute? Why would God even use that terminology in communicating through the Holy Spirit to John the vision? And all through the Old Testament, in other words, usually, in most cases, the imagery and the symbols are found in the Old Testament. So it's not like God's totally changed things. That's how we can know. And in the Old Testament, Israel was God's wife. She was called the wife of God. Where the church is called the bride of Christ. We're a different. We are not the wife of God. The wife of God is Israel. And when Israel went a whoring, if I can use that term, then that meant that she was going after false gods like the Asherah or the Baal or some of these false gods, usually on high places. And when that happened, which happened many times if you study the Old Testament, then they went through a cycle of judgment. It was always they would chase after false gods. God would bring a judge or a deliverer, and they would then come back to God. Remember that issue, that incident where I think it was Josiah found the book of the Lord, and then he proclaimed it, and they all came back to God. So it's up and down, up and down. But the whole idea is when they went a whoring after false gods, and Israel was a prostitute. So that's where this ultimately comes from. The kings of the earth were immoral with her, and those who dwell on the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her immorality. So the focus we can see is twofold here. It's a religious system, but it's also a system of prostitution. And you go, has such a thing ever existed? Well, yeah, in Rome, that's all they had. Before Constantine made Christianity a legal religion, and before Caesar Theodosius in 381 made the Christian religion the religion. And I do say religion because you can't force people to become Christians, but that's what they did. So Constantine said, "Okay, don't kill any more Christians. They're pretty good. We're gonna, they're okay." I saw a sign at the Milphus Bridge, and so he said, "Yeah, I conquered in this sign, so they're good." So that's the way the story goes. I may be mispronouncing the bridge, million, whatever it is, but the thing is that he made it acceptable, and then from 313 to 381, it finally became the main religion, and all the soldiers and everybody had to become Christians. So what happens when everybody has to become a Christian? Pretty much nobody's a Christian. You're going along to get along. You want to get a paycheck, Joe Soldier? Then you're a Christian. Oh yeah, I got a million guys. Christ is great. He's great. Yeah. Keep that money coming. The centurion is paying me. As long as that's happening, I'm good. So, and that's what happened. So basically, Satan at that point said, if I can't beat him, and he couldn't because he couldn't beat the martyrs, he said, join him. So he joined the church. Be aware when Satan joins your church, because he's going to change it. So Satan brought in a lot of paganism. All that's to say that in the temples in Rome, the main aspect of it was that the temples had prostitutes. That was part of the worship, okay? So whatever, yeah, it's true. You can go and research it yourself. I'm not making this up. Thank God we have AI and Google. You can find out anything. So anyway, so yeah, so as part of the worship, people would bring, their gifts and whatever they're bringing to the temple, but then they would have sex with prostitutes. Temple prostitutes. I guess kind of like I've heard in Nevada they have licensed prostitutes. That's what I've heard anyway.
Yeah, it's good about dogs. Like when you read, it talks about the dogs.
The dogs and prostitutes.
Yeah.
Okay, good insight. So, but at any rate, that's just to say, it's not like, oh, this has never happened. No, it has not happened in recent memory where anybody alive today is familiar with it. But that's the way it was in Rome. And of course, most of our civilization was patterned in some way after Rome or influenced. Not this part. But obviously, these prostitutes were an important part. But there's one thing most people don't realize. I've seen some movies set back then that reflected this accurately. I can't remember the title of it, but there was a scene in the street in Rome where there's a trail, what should I say, a train, if you will, of these women all dressed in white being led by the head mistress, if you will, going through the streets, and everybody got away from them because they couldn't touch them, and they were called the Vestal Virgins. And the Vestal Virgins were dedicated to the gods. So you had licentiousness, which is the prostitutes, and you had religiousness, which was the Vestal Virgins. The Vestal Virgins were overseen by the mother of the virgins, and they were dedicated to the gods. They did not participate in the prostitution. They were dedicated to the gods, and they were considered to be married to the god. And that was paganism in the temple of Zeus and Venus and Aphrodite, which is another name. But at any rate, so that was what was going on there. So when Satan joined the actual legitimate church, they brought in a lot of practices. They didn't just destroy it all. They brought a lot of it in. So what happened is when Theodosius made it the official religion, they converted all of these pagan temples into what we call churches today. And a lot of them the pagan temples had domes. They're called basilicas. And so that's how that all came about. And also in the pagan temples, they would have like a stairway, and they'd have a speaker's podium, and the people would come and sit down in their feet, and they would listen to these people speak. And so that's kind of how we got that situation. But you had a priestcraft, and you had a laity, if you will. So you had the holy people and the holy virgins and the holy prostitute. Actually, of course, it's unholy. When the Christian church came in, don't get me wrong, they got rid of the prostitutes, but that was how it was originally. So when God's coming back here and he's talking about this, we have a history to see how this all occurred. And so, it says here that they were practicing in verse 2, the immorality with her. So that in this case, we're talking mainly spiritual immorality. We're not talking temple prostitutes. So what does that mean? That means you're chasing after false religions, whatever one you like. Today, it seems like when I see a movie, there's usually a Buddha in the background, or you find out your actors are Scientologists. They're all chasing false gods, and they're promoting false gods. It's only one God they never promote. And if they do become a Christian, like some notable people have recently, like Jim Carrey become a Christian, Russell Brand, some of these, all of us, they're blackballed in Hollywood. They're good. They're done for. They're not going to get any work. So, but you can become a Buddhist, you can become a Scientologist, you can become anything else, and they love you. They think you're great. But at any rate, keep it on going. And the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and 7 heads and 10 horns. This is telling us that this religious system, at least I believe from what I've studied, is a system that originated way back in Mesopotamia in the original civilizations. And every time each one was conquered, those gods and those practices were brought into the next iteration of it. In other words, so we're going to see that from God's standpoint, which is always having to do with Israel as the focus, we see that these successive empires and their paganism and their idolatry came with them. Egypt was the oldest from God's standpoint because that's where the children of Israel multiplied, right? We all know that story in Genesis, Exodus, etc. And so then we have, after that, we have the Assyrian Empire. And the Assyrian Empire is the one that arose in northern Mesopotamia. And back today, we have a remnant, we call it Syria. It was shortened from Assyria to just Syria. So that over time it changed. That's what happens with words. But at any rate, so it's very small now. The Assyrian Empire was gigantic and they conquered Israel. So in 721, Tiglath-Pileser came down and he took all of the Jews, and now we call them the 10 lost tribes, into captivity. So that was the second. I'm going over the seven heads, the seven successive empires that ultimately are going to culminate in this system. So as we look, we're going to see that by the time Daniel comes along, the Babylonian Empire, the third one, had taken over the Jews in the southern kingdom and brought Daniel and his young buds to Babylon. And so he had a dream, and he had a dream of, in chapter 2, of successive empires. Keep in mind, he didn't mention the previous two because it was a done fact. Everybody knew it. So we had the Egyptians, then we had the Assyrians that took the northern empire, then we had the Babylonians that took the southern empire, and then the Medes and Persians, we call it the Media-Persian Empire of the statue, which is the fourth empire. And these empires, the Medes and the Persians, Darius and Cyrus, allowed the Jews to go back and rebuild the temple. Well, by the way, that's called the Temple of Zerubbabel. And he was the ruler of the Jews. And that temple is the same one that Jesus saw and walked in because it was refurbished by Herod. But then we have the fifth empire, which is the Greek Empire. Now we're getting closer to what most people know about. You probably heard of Alexander the Great. So, but the point here is that as each of these, and this is much of the way of history, much of the way of man, is that every time people were conquered, they would then receive the gods of their conquerors. And the conquerors, in an attempt to appease the conquered, would take their gods or morph them into their system so that everybody was happy. Again, in satanic world, you can believe anything you want to. Okay, it's called pluralism. Okay, so that's the way it works. So the gods change names. And then from the Greek Empire, of course, we all have seen movies about the Roman Empire in the time of Jesus. So the Roman Empire was the sixth empire of world history from God's viewpoint. We're not talking about China or the East, because that had nothing, the Chinese and the Eastern empires had nothing to do with the Jews. This history is only about the Jews. All history is only about the Jews. It's only about the Jews now. What's going on in the Middle East is about the Jews, right? And it's the same history God has foretold, that they were going to be attacked, and they will be, at least the world will try to eradicate them. The Jews have a saying about it. They say, never again. That's a big saying in Israel, and the Jews are taught. What are they talking about? Talking about the Holocaust. Never again. Well, guess who's trying to bring about a new Holocaust? As I watch the TV every day. So any rate, so these are the six empires. And then the Roman Empire, about 500, late 400s, sort of dissolved and went away. The Roman Empire was never conquered from without, really, from outside forces. It decayed and rotted inside until it fell apart. And then you have a period of roughly 500 until the present, where we do not have a Roman Empire. But there has not been a worldwide empire, except maybe you can look at the Holy Roman Empire of Charlemagne, but that really wasn't worldwide. It was pretty much European. And you could almost make a case for the United States, but we're not a biblical empire in that sense. Yeah, we're the young lions of Tarshish. But so we see that all this is to say that even more so than the governmental system or the economic system, the religious system of each of these has continued until this day. And there's going to come a seventh empire, which has never existed. And that empire, many people call the revived Roman Empire. I would use that, except I think we're missing the boat if we think it's just old Rome. Because the scripture is clear that this is going to be a worldwide empire. So it's totally distinct from all the others. it's absorbing all these things. And what was the main characteristic of Rome and all the other empires, that it's is absorbing as far as the syncretism of bringing various religions together. It is this new age, one world religious spirit. And increasingly people today say, oh, I don't believe in religion. I don't go to church. I don't have anything to do with that, but I'm spiritual. That is the essence of this. That is the satanic religion. Anytime anybody says I'm spiritual, but I don't go to church, then that person is really saying that, yes, I'm spiritual, but not of the right spirit. I'm serving a master, but not the correct one. So that's how that works. But that's to say that it's coming, and I believe in our lifetime is coming, the seventh empire. And others may differ on that. There's different opinions. That's fine, but that's where I've come to. And just to say that this religion is named and given a name in Scripture called Mystery Babylon. So why is it called mystery, mysterion in the Greek, which is, we say mystery? Why is that Babylon? Why would Babylon be used? Well, because originally, if you go back far enough, the very first religions that came about in the very first civilization came about in the area that would come to be known as Babylon. And Babylon, as far as I can see, Babel, they say, means confusion, probably has an older meaning than that. But Babylon means land of Babel. In fact, if you listen to a Scottish guy, this is our land. Sounds like lawn, doesn't lawn? Yeah, Babylon, this is our lawn. Hoochman, this is our lawn. So, I think, land, LON, it's the old pronunciation for land. So Babel means the land of Babel. And where was the tower? Babel. So the original civilization of and Eridu and Ur of the Chaldeans and all that was right at the mouth of the Persian Gulf where the Tigris and Euphrates meet, which most people today, I've seen something recently where the satellite maps have shown that is the Garden of Eden. Because there was a river that was huge, they found, that's dried up now, that went through Saudi Arabia. So you had Tigris, Euphrates, and the Pishon went up into the mountains, and the other one went across Saudi Arabia. So with satellites, we now can verify and see that there were indeed four there, and they all met there. If you believe differently, that's fine, but the evidence seems conclusive to me if you see these satellite photos. But at any rate, so what some excited youngins. Okay. In case you didn't hear, there's running young people. Okay, so at any rate, so we see that these religions were morphed into one to the other, and they would usually take upon themselves in each empire. A good example is Greece and Rome. All of our planets are named after Roman gods, but they all had Greek names before that. Mars, everybody knows Mars, right? So we have Mercury, Roman name, Venus, Roman name. Earth came from somewhere else. Then we have Mars, we have Jupiter, Uranus, which is the oddball because that in Greek, it's the only one that has Greek. It means heavens. Then we have Neptune and Pluto. Pluto was Hades, the god of the underworld. But anyway, those are all Roman names, but they all came from Greek. In other words, the previous Greek civilization was conquered and all those names are brought in. This is how it always worked. And then they would change the names. They would still worship the same gods, have the same temples, have the same process. But of course, they wanted to rename them to be friendly to their culture. And we have renamed the planets, if you will, or used the names that they gave us. So the whole idea here is that we have a continuing, revelation of a religious system called Mystery Babylon. And why was it called mystery? Because in the old religions and isms, the way it worked was that you had to be, it's kind of like the Masons or whatever today, right? You had to have a mystery that you were initiated into. So they became mystery religions. You can study this term. The mystery religion meant that the initiated, it's just like being a Mason. You had to go start at the bottom, right? And then they would tell you certain key mysteries you had to learn, and they'd start you at the bottom mysteries. Well, so these religions were just like that. In other words, there are certain mysteries that only the initiated could know. I remember my cousin, when my dad died, came over and he said he wanted to take care. He thought he was doing a good thing. He said, I'm going to let you know I'm a Mason. I can get you in. And I said, well, but tell me more about it. I really can't. I can't tell you. He said, okay, I'll tell you the first thing the first mystery you got to learn. And I said, okay, what is it, Herb? He said, seek and you will find. I thought, I just a new Christian a couple of years, I said, that's no mystery. That's Jesus said that, and I said, no, get away from me. I didn't even know what they were. I said, no, I don't want any of that crazy stuff. But anyway, but that's it. They initiate you through these so-called mysteries, and then eventually you become a 33rd degree Shriner. I don't need to get into Masonic concepts, but anyway, it's all satanic paganism. They worship Lucifer. But at any rate, so what we have here is these systems that were mystery religions. They're all mystery religions, and only the initiated, the highest level of people. It's kind of like Scientology, It's like that one actress that finally found out what it was all about. L. Ron Hubbard. He had these secrets, and when she finally got to the highest level and read the secrets, it was like crazy sci-fi nonsense. But that's kind of the way it is. So, the devil doesn't care. As long as he gets you hooked, you're good. So I'm kind of in and out of time here, but I just wanted to tell you that as we go on, we're going to see more about how this evolved. Just to let you know, on Mount Ararat, the ark came down and it has been seen up there. There's debate about where it is now, but I personally believe it's going to be totally unveiled by the end time. And I think it may even be global warming. It's encrusted in ice on the top of this mountain. As the planet gets hotter, the ice will melt and the ark will be revealed. Time will tell if I'm correct. I believe it's right. We'll see. But anyway, I think God's going to show it before he brings the tribulation, because it's going to stand out as a witness to man and man's willfulness and man's evil, and as a way to cause them to repent. But the whole idea is, from the Mount Ararat, people went down like they would to warmer climates. Some of them went west, some of them went north, not many because it was colder. And they went south and they went to Egypt. Some of them went to the west to Egypt, and some of them went down to the Persian Gulf there, where that body of water is at the bottom of Iraq. And that's where the very first civilization, Sumerians, came. We don't know where they come. You can look it up. People, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just popped up out of nowhere, a full-blown civilization. And the archaeologists and historians, they don't know where they came from. They had the wheel, they had all kinds of technology. Well, it's easy. All that technology came with Noah, and he taught it to his sons from the flood, the pre-flood world. They brought all, and that's why they didn't have to gradually invent it. They had it all. They went down to the warm climate, set up shop, and they had it all at one time. And that was about over 4,000 years ago. So, but that's just to let you know that that's the civilizations then proceeded. There was the Egyptian civilization, the ones that went all the way to the west. The people that were down in the mouth of Persian Gulf went up the Tigris, Euphrates, and they founded Assyria and Babylon. And then it kept on moving westward, and they went over across Turkey into Greece, and then they went over from Greece into Italy. So things just kept on moving as people multiplied. And that's why we have these civilizations that I mentioned, and how they grew over time, thousands of years. And it's all very logical when you see and understand the scripture and what it taught and what it's teaching. So I'm just going to leave that little tidbit with you, and we will continue on next week, further down into our chapter 17. So, honey, will you close us in prayer?